I am Magan Keita. I am, and let me underline it 3 times, the Interim Director of Africana Studies. You hear that, Dr. Lucky?
I heard you.
Is Dr. Coleman here? I'm the Interim Director of Africana Studies. That means I'm walking soon, okay? Sometime soon. And because I'm the Interim Director of Africana Studies, I'm quite clear that this crowd is not here for me. It's clear, okay? But you are here for the people who are sitting at the front table. The Africas, assisted by Dr. Crystal Lucky. Michael Africa Sr., Debbie Africa, and Michael Africa Jr. And they have something to share with us. Something that, in fact, goes to the heart of what we do at Villanova and that is central to the project of Africana Studies. The idea that separates us from a lot of other groups in terms of our notion that the acquisition of knowledge is only meaningful if it has application. So we're here today to talk about application. Application. Without belaboring the point, I just simply want to say a couple of things about our host, Dr. Crystal Lucky. Everybody knows Dr. Lucky. Everybody loves Dr. Lucky. Everybody, no, not everybody, but some of us live in fear of Dr. Lucky. Caleb, are you here?
I think he was.
Yeah, right. He knows what I'm talking about, okay? Crystal Lucky has been at this university for a long time. There are only 2 people I can think of who have been here longer, okay? And one of them I'm not going to mention, the other one is me. And within that, she has, in fact, achieved the rank of Associate Professor in the Department of English, and now serves as our Associate Dean in the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences. She is the author of forgive me, Crystal, I'm thinking about myself, okay? What is that, 2016? 2016 work, which all of you would probably want to look up. I'm trying to get her to give me a free copy now because I know it's going to cost a lot of money. And that work is, in fact, Crystal, tell me the title again.
A Mysterious Life and Calling.
A Mysterious Life and Calling,
the autobiography
of Reverend Charlotte Riley. It's Crystal's work in terms of thinking about the questions of how we integrate issues of femininity with the issue, or feminism with the question of Africana studies. And the question of the ideas that are inherent in Black religious theory and the ideas of liberation theology, going way back. So without further ado, Crystal is going to host this panel, and I want to thank the Africas for joining us this afternoon, and I want to thank all of you for being here.
Good afternoon.
Thank all of you for coming out this afternoon. I am delighted to be here. And before we get started, I do want to thank the Africana Studies program for hosting this event, to Dr. Keita and to Joyce Harden for helping us get everything together. Also to the Center for Peace and Justice Education, Dr. Catherine Geddick-Soltis, who was very interested, very supportive of bringing the Africas to campus and to helping to co-sponsor this event. To the History Department, Dr. Mark Galicchio, who is the chair of that department, and to the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, our dean in that college is Dr. Adele Lindenmeyer, for their support. And then last but not least, big thanks go out to Professor Joe Betts, who, without whose intervention this project would not have come to be. Joe, stand up so people can see you. All right, so I'm going to talk about him in a minute. So these folks sitting up here, Debbie, Michael Jr. in the middle, and Michael Sr. on the end, working with these people and getting to know them and working on this book has become one of the centers of my life. And in some ways, I am the most unlikely person to be writing a book on 3 central figures of MOVE, the organization that found itself in the middle of one of the most controversial encounters in Philadelphia's history. I'm a scholar of 19th and 20th century African American literature, as Dr. Keita alluded to. And my research focuses most on the work of Black women writers, most specifically the literary and cultural productions of Black women preachers. And yet, like every important interaction in my life, this connection was divinely ordered. In June of 2018, Debbie Africa was released from prison after serving 40 years of what I think I remember was supposed to be a 100-year sentence after being unjustly convicted of murder in 1978. 4 months later, Michael Africa Sr., her husband, was released under similar circumstances. While in prison, Michael Sr. earned his degree through Villanova University's Graterford program. And two of his professors were Dr. Tom Arvanites in the Sociology and Criminology Department and Dr. Joe Betts from Philosophy. After Michael's release in October, Dr. Betts wanted to host a campus visit for Michael and his family to see his alma mater and to meet some faculty and staff. I was fortunate to be one of the people who was invited to join that campus visit. And for me, I can't say how they felt, but for me it was love at first sight. I didn't know what to expect. I remembered vividly the details about MOVE, about the encounter on August 8th, 1978, which was 7 days after my 14th birthday. I remembered achingly the details as I saw them on the television news of the May 9th, 1985 encounter and that affected neighborhood in West Philadelphia, which was just a few blocks from my aunt's home. So I knew what I thought I knew in my mind. And on top of all of that, I had never met anyone, as I suspect none of you have either, who had spent 40 years in prison. And so I knew that I wasn't sure what I was going to encounter or who I was going to encounter, but I knew that I wanted to meet these folks. And I knew I wanted to be in their presence, and I wanted to hear their story. So when Dr. Betts contacted me, I immediately wrote him back, said, I'll be there, just name the time and place. And so we met in the dean's office. And my son, who is an undergraduate here, who is doing work in documentary film production, working with Dr. Hezekiah Lewis here in our communication department. I knew the work that he had been doing, and I grabbed him and I said, do you want to meet these folks? And I started talking to him about it. Well, little did I know that my son went online and did all kinds of research and immediately came back to me and said, yes, I want to be there. So the next day or a couple of days later, we showed up and I got to meet these wonderful people. That day, we sat in the dean's office and we spoke easily with each other as if we had known each other for a long time. And we found out that we had a lot of really important connections. One was my brother, playwright and director Ozzie Jones. He and Michael Jr. had worked together in the past. So when I mentioned my brother, Michael looked at me and said, you know Ozzie Jones? And I was like, yeah, you know, stupid brother. That's what I call him all the time. It's my stupid brother. And he said, you know Ozzie Jones? And then I thought, okay, maybe he's got some kind of celebrity status I don't know about. Well, in fact, he is a pretty important director in the city of Philadelphia. And many people don't connect us because we have different last names. I took my husband's last name in marriage. And as we talked, we realized that the two of them had worked together in the past and went way back. Then we realized that we lived near each other in Delaware County. I told them about my church that my husband and I have been pastors of for the last 25 years, which is also near their home. And I knew that I wanted to stay connected to them, but I did not have any idea how it would happen. As we continued to talk, we realized that we had even deeper connections. Debbie's aunt and other family members had been members of the church that I grew up in West Philadelphia, down in the bottom, as Black Philadelphians call it, who know the community. Debbie came to New Bethlehem Baptist Church when I was a little girl. She and I are a few years apart, And Debbie participated in many of the same activities that I did. She knows many of the women who I considered big sisters at New Bethlehem. Our connections were uncanny. And so when I asked them if anyone had approached them about writing a book, they said yes. But they said, we're not sure who to trust. And I confessed to them that I said, this is not really my area of expertise. And I went on to tell them about what I do. But then I said, but, and before I could get the sentence out of my mouth, they said, we want you to work with us. They said, we trust you. And since then, we have embarked upon what I consider to be an incredibly important and mutually satisfying journey together. In fact, Michael Sr. decided after 40 years of incarceration, he wants to get remarried to his first love, his girl Debbie. And so, because they want to do a big, wonderful public ceremony and celebration, and because I just happen to be an ordained pastor, we're getting ready to have a big, fabulous celebration on August 6th at Sword of the Spirit Church in April 6th. Did I say August? Okay, April. Maybe it's something, psychological that there's so much work to be done, I'm stressing out. In April 6th, we are going to have a big celebration, and I'm going to preside over their reunion. This is an important encounter and project for a few reasons. Michael, Debbie, and Michael Jr. have a unique story to tell. It's one that speaks to the importance of community commitment and very specifically the strength of the black family. In an era of political tension, anger, hatred, and bitterness, their story highlights the power of love and forgiveness. The love between Michael Sr. and Debbie, the love of a son for his parents, and for them, for their children, and their ability to move forward after 40 years of pain and struggle. In an era of despicable mass incarceration, a disproportionate number of black and brown men and women, their story offers insight into how folks survive. It also offers us who are interested in hearing how incarcerated parents might raise their children to become successful adults from prison with the help of the right kind of community. There is power in family and community that might not appear unified at first glance. And then finally, much has happened in the history of the city of Philadelphia. And I think that their story deserves to be a part of it. So what I've asked them to do and how we're going to work through this is a sort of free-flowing conversation. And so Michael Jr. is going to begin by giving us a brief history of MOVE, of that 1978 and 1985 incidences. And then we're going to move to Debbie, to her story about being apart from her family for 40 years and finally being reunited, about the birth of Michael Jr. in prison, the experience of being the first of the MOVE 9 to return home, and the ways that she remained positive during her 40-year journey. We're going to move to Michael Sr., his perspective about his journey, his degree from Villanova, and all the activities and educational programs he participated in. I saw a book that outlines all of the work he did in 40 years, and it is about this thick, full of a description of activities, degrees, accolades, all of the work that he has done, his perspective about prison reform and the current projects that he and his family are engaged in. And then we're going to circle back around to Michael Jr., who I think has a very unique perspective as both in some ways an insider and an outsider. An insider as a member of the family who has literally worked his entire life to get his parents home. And then someone who was on the outside looking in and looking out at the way the rest of the world was viewing his parents. He said to me recently during one of our meetings, we meet almost every week, sometimes every other week, depending on our schedules. And I don't know, they have said to me that for them this is therapeutic. It's therapeutic for me. It's a really interesting way that our work is unfolding. And The last time we met, Michael said to me, in some ways, I feel like I grew up faster than most kids. He said, but in other ways, I feel like my growth has been stunted. And so if you can imagine that kind of insider-outsider perspective, I thought that his voice would be very nice to hear last, and then we're going to open it up for question and answer. Does that sound all right to you? Yeah. All right. Let me just say this as Michael Jr. comes on up. Do you want to come up or you want to sit down? If he sits down, can you see and hear him? All right, so they said just pick up the mic and you can sit down. Okay. And I think you might have to make sure it's on. We are working through what this book is going to look like. But the one thing I know is that it's going to revolve around 3 pillars. And the 3 pillars are Michael, Michael, and Debbie. Philadelphia is somehow going to get woven around that. 40 years of Philadelphia history. But the story is about these 3 wonderful people. I'll turn it over to Michael Jr. So you're going to have to talk into it.
Thank you, Dr. Crystal, for that beautiful introduction. That's the best one we've got so far. And thank you all, everyone who came out here today to see us and hear us talk about this extensive story. Obviously, an hour and a half can't give the entire story. I have to go to the other microphone? Okay, I'll be right back.
So I guess they're going to make you stand. Is that okay?
Okay, how's that?
Great.
Yeah, I think they want to see you on the video. That's what
I'm a little nervous. This is, okay, so as I was saying, thank you all for coming out. It feels really good for me to see people come and accept us and receive us and the information that we have. As if you've ever looked up MOVE, you know that we come from a time when we were not accepted. And as a young child growing up in MOVE, I lived through the violence and the anger and the hate and all of that from the system. So it feels really good, and I'm always humbled to see people come out to hear and talk, to hear us talk about our story and our past. Can I have a show of hands for people who have heard of MOVE? Okay, great. That helps. So the MOVE organization surfaced in the 70s, founded by a man named John Africa. John Africa was a person who saw the ills in the system, saw the things that was happening to life as a result of systematic oppression, and he saw the pollution in the water, he saw the abuse of animals, he saw the abuse of police to people in the community and around, and he wanted to do something about it. So what he did was he started talking to people about it. He started talking to people about life and the importance of life, and about the importance of nature, and about the importance of self. You are important. Your life is important. Your health is important. And as he began to do this and put this information out and talk to people about this, people began to listen. And then the information that he was talking about was backed up by the example that he set. When he talked to people about health and fitness, and he talked to women about how you can have babies naturally at home. You don't need to go to a hospital. You know, get yourself healthy and you can do this, right? And people were like, what? Like, you have to go to a hospital to have a baby. And he would explain, no species of life go to hospitals to have babies. And naturally, you don't need a hospital to go to a hospital to have a baby either. You can have a baby as long as you're healthy. You can do this. If you need to go to the hospital for some reason, that's one thing. But you can do, So he worked with people, and the women began to have their babies at home naturally without medicines and pharmaceutical drugs, all that kind of stuff. So it was like a proven concept, right? So people were motivated by it. And when he talked to people about the importance of health, and he talked to them about working and exercising, and people didn't really understand it or see the importance of it, really. But when people got sick, you know how when you get sick, you take health much more seriously than when you weren't sick. So people would, they started exercising and working out, and 10 push-ups turned into 20 push-ups, and 20 turned into, before you know it, people were doing 100 push-ups at a whop and thousands in a day. So people were just motivated by it. He put out the information about the zoo and how the zoo is a slave plantation for animals. And he put out how prisons are modern-day slave plantations for people, and how black people are being brutalized by these police. And he talked about the civil rights era and Martin Luther King and the marching and the importance of that work. And his example was proven in the way he himself lived. He talked about extracting from the system and not participating in these things that the system put out here for people to get caught up in, that hurts people, that hurts life. And that was a huge problem for the system, because if you know anything about righteousness, you know that health and fitness in this country is a crime. Because if you're talking about true health and fitness, you ain't talking about allowing companies to come in and pollute your air so that they can build this nuclear tower that's going to give you cancer and give your grandkids cancer. You ain't talking about that. If you're talking about true health and fitness, you're talking about living in a way where you don't build atomic plants on the river and pollute the river that we got to drink from. You ain't talking about that. So the system, they took notice, and they were like, something's wrong. So what they would do, what they would do is they would send the police out. And the police's job was to move people from speaking the truth. Stop them from talking about the zoo and how it's enslaving of these animals. And they would beat people, and they would attack the people, and they would put the people in jail and charge them with, and give them these outrageous prison sentences. So things escalated, and it escalated to the point where on August 8th, 1978, so many police came out to our house, and hundreds of police came to our house, and they attacked our house, and my mother and my father were in the house, and they shot the house up. The police shot the house up with tear gas and water, fire hoses from the fire engines, and they shot the house up with bullets, and they tore the house down, damn near on top of the people in it. They arrested the people in the house because at the time, they arrested the people in the house, and they found out that one of their cops during that shooting was shot and killed. And of course, they blamed Move People for the killing. And those people spent, as you see, my mother and my father spent 40 years in prison. At that time, my mother was pregnant with me in that house, in the line of fire with those fire hoses and those bullets. That escalated into a thing where the people that were left on the street, the Move members that were on the street, were trying to get the people that were in prison out of prison. And the campaign to get them out was so strong that because the system did not want to let our people out of prison, rather than deal with that and let them out or give them a fair trial, or go through all of that, their reaction was to drop a bomb on our house and kill us. And that's what they did. They dropped a bomb on our house on May 13th, 1985, killing 11 Move men, women, and children. 5 of them were children. So when that happened, there was some Move people left on the street, few, and we continued the campaign to get the people out and make people aware of what happened on May 13th, 1985. And as we continued to do this, we picked up momentum, and we grew a little bit. And then in 1982, Ramona Africa, who's the lone adult survivor of May 13th, that bombing, she came out of prison. And when she came out of prison, it was energized. The energy from that release energized the people, and the people began to pick up steam. And I got working on different things with different supporters, and they pulled me into working as a teenager. They pulled me into working on their on my parents' case, and we're working on it, and with investigators and lawyers, and we're traveling all over the place up to the prisons to strategize about how and what we need to do to get them out of prison. And it took us a long time to make that happen, but it happened last year in June, and it was a long time, but we got that victory. So that's just a little brief history, and now my mom and my dad are going to give y'all some information from them. Thank you.
Okay, again, I want to thank Dr. Crystal Lucky, who did a fantastic speech, and everybody else who came out here. We're just so thrilled, like Michael said, to have everybody here and just participating in this, in this moment. Because for so long, people just didn't even want to hear anything about MOVE or what happened or anything. But anyway, just to bring it up to date, from what Michael was saying about August 8th and what we all went through, and then our release. I'll start out that I was 8 months pregnant with Michael Jr., and I had a 2-year-old baby also. I mean, we came under plenty of fire, tear gas, water, everything. I mean, they really did throw everything at us that they could. During our trial, it came out that the deluge gun that they used, which is the big fire hose, and the tear gas smoke put together in the house at the same time was actually a strategic move, because both of those things together just causes suffocation and ultimately just killing people. The hoses from that were used in our house and on our dogs were like, they're deadly weapons. And the point is they did come out at us based on the fact that they said a bench warrant for us. We had bench warrants for us for our arrest as to why we did not leave the house, why we did not leave the premises. That's what they came out to our house with: hundreds of cops, firemen, deluge guns, which are fire hoses. They came out with tear gas, smoke, all of these things because they had a bench warrant for our arrest for not leaving the house in 1978. I want to make one point too that I don't think we really made clear to Dr. Lucky and other people that we've talked to, and that is the fact that when in 1977, 1978, when we had an agreement with the city of Philadelphia, and that was to come off the platform, which at that point we had just, it was just, we staged a whole demonstration, and we had to leave. We made an agreement to leave the house, but people had already left the house. Some people went to New York, some people went to Virginia. We were left in the house, and so we had to leave the premises within 90 days. And that 90 days was from like March to August. In August, we were still there. We didn't have any place to go. But like I said, other people had already left the house. But I just wanted to make that point because that's a fine point that has gotten lost in the history, that we didn't have any place to go. However, in all that, and through all the smoke and through all the gas and through all the, the bullets and everything that came down on us, we managed to come out alive. And unfortunately, our officer was killed. We were subsequently arraigned for murder, third-degree murder, and subsequently also sentenced to 30 to 100 years each. 9 of us were sentenced to 30 to 100 years each. I was pregnant. I didn't know what was going to happen. For real, I didn't know what was going to happen. All I know is that because I was pregnant, that was on my mind most. The baby that I had just had taken from me was on my mind most. And so I was just, I just was nervous because I didn't know how things were going to go. In the past, we have not had good times with the city of Philadelphia as far as police officers and our children. We've had many mysterious miscarriages at the hands of police officers. We've had a baby that was killed by the city of Philadelphia police officers, and so I didn't know what was going to happen. Carrying a baby and being in the hands of the city of Philadelphia and a jail cell was just something that I just was wary of. But I got through it, and I didn't, because we do have our babies at home. I had my first baby at home, naturally, no midwife, no medicine, no drugs, and I had a successful birth. So in my mind, I'm thinking, you know what? I'm not going to no hospital with these people. I'm going to have my baby right here, and they're not going to know it. So at the point that we were arrested, we were put in jail, but we were put in isolation. An isolation cell where there was a wing full of 63 cells, and the isolation unit was separated by those cells and a door, a big gate. So there were like 8 of us in these isolation cells, and 2 of us, move people, were pregnant at the time. So they put the extra 2 people in the cells with myself and the other supporter who was there in the cell with her. And they did that as kind of like a watch, you know, to make sure that, you know, we were pregnant. She was actually 9 months pregnant, and I was 8. And so it was like a precaution, you know, to put them in the cell with us. But listen, I said, look, I am not telling them when I'm going to have this baby, because they will never take him from me or her from me, and I'll never see it again. So anyway, the plan was just to be quiet, be quiet. So that night that morning of September 15th, early morning, I started feeling pain. I started feeling really pressure, mostly pressure. And because I had a baby already, because I had seen other Move women have babies, I knew I could do it. You know, I wasn't even thinking about the stress or the pressure I was under or what had just happened. You know, I was just thinking about that moment. So, anyway, I woke my sister Janine up, because she was in the cell with me. And I said, Janine, I'm getting ready to have a baby. And she said, now she had 3 babies already. She said, are you sure? And I said, yeah. She said, oh, okay. Well, she was more nervous than I was. But I said, yeah, I am. So anyway, I just kind of lay still for a while, and then the guards would come by, and I'm like, acting like I'm asleep. And they would come by, check with the flashlight, because at, you know, at night it's dark, so they have the flashlight to come in, and, you know, with every cell, just look in every cell. So as time went on, which really wasn't that long time, it only took me about 2 hours from the time I started feeling pressure until I actually had them. So, you know, I was just laying there. We kind of talked, you know, we just kind of talking back and forth. And then when you feel pressure, if anybody, you know, have felt labor pains, they know, you know, that it's not an easy thing to kind of like lay through. But, you know, because I was kind of strong and I was healthy, it wasn't severe, not one of those like screaming, help me. It wasn't quite like that, but you still feel the bearing down of a big head. So
She just
but,
called you a big head.
I heard her.
But anyway, I was determined. I'm like, you know what? I don't care what. I am not going to willingly go along with these people for nothing, because I mean, this is 1978. I mean, they were brutal times. They were suspicious times. They were just not good times, especially for Move people or people who, or not just black people either. I mean, just people who just, you know, did not go along with everything in the system. Kent State kids, you know, other things, you know, that happened with other, you know, people. And so I was just determined I wasn't going to just give it up that easily. So anyway, 2 hours had went by, maybe another half an hour, and I finally I said, oh, Janine, here he comes. And she was just looking all nervous at me. And all of a sudden, you know, I popped him right out. And now we were all locked in, because it was in the middle of the night. So none of my other sisters, Move sisters, could come out and see me or anything like that. But the officers would still come around. So I had to stay still and cover it like I was still asleep. And they would just come in and they didn't know what was going on. They didn't have a clue. But anyway, when the next morning I washed him, I wiped him off and everything. And he was just laying there with me and with Janine on the other side. And So finally, you know, as soon as they locked it, once everybody's locked in all night, and then 6 o'clock in the morning, that's when they pop everybody's locks, and you can come out on the wing if you want to, or come back in isolation, that little hallway that they had. So as soon as they opened the door and the officers left, all my sisters were in my room. They were like, "Oh my God, I knew Debbie had the baby. I knew she had the baby." They all came, you know, right from that. "Oh my God, look at his hair. He got so much hair." And we just, was, you know, we just kind of tended to, you know, that they just played with him and just, you know, just bask in the joyful moment of just, you know, what had just happened. And a couple times, you know, he kind of stirred around and started whimpering a little bit, and he wanted to eat or stirring for some reason, but he started making a little noise, but the officer was coming by, so my sister would get up on the step and she would start singing, "Glory, glory, hallelujah." And then she would sing this other song. The next song she sang was "Maybe." I don't know, you guys probably don't even know that, some of you might, but it's an old song. But this is what happened every time he would make a noise. She would get up and she would start singing. She got a really loud, booming voice, really pretty though. She could really sing. And so she would do that every time, and they still like didn't have a clue. But anyway, we kept him there. I mean, we kept him there for a couple of days, and so we had to do the dreaded thing, which was to just, you know, I had to find some kind of way. And let me tell you, that was probably one of the most hardest decisions that I've ever had to make in all of my entire life, was to tell them that I had a baby, because I wasn't even sentenced, I didn't know what was going to happen, and you know, or to just let them come and find them. Now, so because I was so scared about letting them come and find them and didn't know what was going to happen without documentation, based on the history of MOVE at that point and MOVE Women and MOVE Babies, I didn't want to take that chance. So we talked about it. Me and my sisters talked about it, and they just asked me, you know, what did I decide to do? And I said, you know what, I think it's better if we tell them. This way we tell them, everybody knows it, it's documented proof. They cannot say that there was no baby, because we didn't have a birth certificate, nothing. And so, you know, I decided to make that very, very, very hard decision. Not to mention, it would have been, the longer we kept him, it would have just been so hard. He would have gotten attached to me, I would have gotten attached to him. It was, all these things were just rolling around in my mind, and it was past hard. Anyway, so we were actually going through preliminary hearings at the time, and you know, my sister Janet was going to court, and Janet was usually in Michael Sr.'s bunch to go. So I wrote a note to Michael Sr., and you know, I told him I had had the baby, and it was a boy, and what his name was, and his name was Michael. And she took that note to him. She also put out in court that I had a baby, which the officer was trying to deny. It was like, "Oh no, she don't have no baby. We just checked in her, and she's big, you know. She didn't have a baby." Well, they didn't want any kind of liabilities against the jail, so they would deny it. Anyway, so they finally came out and said, you know, well, let's just go check. So the judge sent them downstairs to check. And they were coming back to my cell and saying, "Debbie Sims, come to the front. Debbie Sims, come to the front." And they kept calling me. Well, I wasn't going to the front. I just had a baby. I wasn't going anywhere. So they finally came back there, and they saw him. Like, they saw him laying there with me, and they just like, "Oh yeah, she does." Well, so they had to report back to the judge that I had a baby. Anyway, so. We still didn't really, he wasn't taken from me or anything at that point. I still had him. We had him well into the night, into the next day, and everything, until they decided what to do, because this has never happened before. Never. And so I think they just were at a disadvantage and at a lull as to what they should do. But finally, you know, they came on that next night and came with some, you know, with their own car, their own jail car, and took me. I had to go to a hospital in order to have him released, because they wasn't going to release him right from jail. So I had to go actually to another facility in order to have him released. But my sisters all walked me to the front, and you know, we got in the car and went to the hospital and had released him to my mother. But anyway, that was a long journey. My sister turned me around to every single one of those 63 cells. this is Debbie, and this is Michael, and he's strong and healthy. And she turned me around as I was walking down this hall. And, but she was doing that to document evidence that he was here, and he was healthy, and he was alive. And that's the last that they saw of him. Do you want me to go on?
Why don't we let Michael take some, and then we'll come back around, because I'm thinking that probably people are going to have questions for you.
Yeah, okay.
I'm a woman who's had a baby, and when I first heard that story, I was looking just like you, Dr. Cada. How in the world? Not only did you have the baby, but you didn't make any noise. I have no idea. So why don't we let Michael talk a little bit about, Michael Sr. talk a little bit about his perspective, and then I think probably we'll get some questions, because I'm sure that people have a lot of burning questions for you all. So thank you, Debbie, for sharing.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I am thrilled to be here in y'all's presence. And you heard an amazing story from Debbie Africa, and this is why I came to move in the first place. You know, I was a 17-year-old Marine at the time. I had known her for a couple years already. When I came back to Philadelphia, a lot of things were raging that I wasn't really aware of. Kind of with the Panthers, kind of with BLA. The Vietnam War was raging. I wasn't politically conscious, nor did I really care to be at the time. But hearing some of the stories that Debbie's family was telling, Debbie's from the Move family. Her uncle is John Africa. They have a lot of relatives in the organization already. This was the first time I really paid attention to some of the things that were going on around me that I didn't pay attention to before. I came down and I participated in a demonstration because they had arrested her little brother, Chuck. At the time, Chuck was 13 years old. They put him in jail for 10 days for truancy. I said, that's a demonstration I'll attend. And in attending that demonstration, they didn't even let me get out the van with a placard. They put me straight in jail, took us down to the roundhouse, roughed us up, didn't feed us for 2 or 3 days, took us to the detention center. At one point, Mumia said in his book that the treatment he received from the police, after they stomped him and kicked him, they kicked him right into the Black Panther Party. Well, that didn't happen for me. They, you know, I wanted to go. I'm going back to North Carolina. I'm not staying here. But seeing these things compelled me to be more active, to take a more active role in participating and demonstrating and speaking truth to power, as many before us had done. And I stayed around, and the longer I stayed around, I felt more, you know, compelled to get involved. And at the time, John Africa was speaking about prison reform then. This is 1974. He was speaking about things that was going on in prison, and he was doing it from first-hand experience because a lot of Move people had been to prison. So I didn't know that I would be one of them at the time, but seeing some of the things I saw was horrific. And getting that first-hand experience made me commit myself to speaking out. I'm hopeful now with some of the things that are happening with prison reform. Liz Geyer here just told me about George, her boyfriend George, who's up right now for commutation. More and more people are coming up for things like that. The juvenile life has just had a big boom, and a lot of people were released for that. But each generation, there's an ebb and flow. and those gates shut down real quick sometimes. And so the pressure has to stay on to make sure that those people are attended to. But moving on with Debbie. This 40-year journey has been a long, arduous journey. But we've learned a lot. We've experienced a lot. We had a son that came back 40 years later to free us. The son Debbie spoke of having in that jail cell came back to free us. And he did it. Not single-handedly. He had a lot of help. He had a lot of support. But he committed himself not just for us, but for other people as well. And we're continuing to speak on this issue because as we started, we felt compelled to do just that. And we have the same commitment that our son has, that he was born with. And I just want to thank him, and thank all those like him. All right, so Dr. Crystal spoke about Dr. Betts and his contribution and what he meant, how he introduced us to Dr. Crystal and what he brought, and it wasn't just this Villanova that he introduced us to. Dr. Betts is very instrumental in prison reform himself. And anyway, I'm glad to be here, and I thank you.
So I think that what I'd like to do is, which will allow you also, Michael Jr., to talk some about the process of getting your parents freed. I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask a couple questions and then also open it for questions, because I think that one of the things that, I've been talking to all three of them so much. My original plan was to talk to each of them separately and then at times to talk together, but we've never been apart. We've always been together. And what has been so interesting has been that as I would direct one question to one person, that one person would start to answer the question, but then, of course, I'd get an answer that included all three of them because everybody has a perspective for every question. So Debbie has her way of seeing whatever question I answered, but Michael Sr. was wherever he was. And then Michael Jr. was thinking about it the way he was. So one of the things that I wanted to ask is I would really like, so I asked Michael Sr. one time about his journey during that 40 years, and I was asking him about getting his degree from Villanova, but of course Villanova was not his first degree. Michael actually has an associate's degree from, is it St. Francis? From St. Francis College. And then Villanova, which I am very proud of this, Villanova took how many of the credits?
56.
56 of the 57?
Of the 61.
Of the 61. Villanova took 56 of the 61 credits towards his degree. I think Villanova should get a hand clap for that. And so when he decided that he was going to take the degree, he went on and he started work. So I said, well, what else were you doing? And I'd like you to tell, if you could you talk a minute about the other things that you did, some of which had to do with prison reform, some of it was just your own activities. Could you talk some about it, and even some of the things that you saw that was going on with some of the other guys?
All right. Well, I started off with, just several classes, carpentry, music, computer. You know, I took a lot of courses. You know, anything they had to offer, I was taking before I happened on the St. Francis degree program. This is up Huntington Prison. Throughout these years, I was also talking. I met a lot of guys. I met George as a student in Villanova. You know, but there were a lot of inside-out programs that dealt with guys thinking a different way. It was called Thinking for a Change. It was a program called Thinking for a Change. It was a citizenship program, or a program called CFS, which was an organization, a prison organization, 300 members, that invited people from the community in to speak about prison reform, also getting prisoners reunited with their children. And so, you know, I was involved.
One of the things that you all will have to see, and I suspect maybe this will be in our book, Michael makes some of the most beautiful furniture you have ever seen. And I have been asking him, why are you trying to find a job? I'm like, work for yourself. His work is magnificent. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not saying like magnificent for prison. I mean magnificent. That's right. Beautiful work. And so I've learned about all of these different activities. And one of the things that has been really important to me to sort of make sure that people understand, for people that, if you've never been to prison, if you've never worked with the Graterford program, or you've never had the opportunity to go, you don't realize what's going on in the prison, and that people make choices and decisions about the life that they're going to lead. And one of the things that has just been so overwhelming to me is the way that both Michael and Debbie made a decision about how they were going to live those years. Debbie, could you talk a little bit about the activities that you were involved with, in particular your gardening?
Yeah, I like the way you actually put that, because it is true. Once people go to prison, it's like you just, like they say, out of sight, out of mind is the truth. Like, unless you really have a good support system or people who are like connected to you, you really do like they're gone, you know? So you don't really think about what's going on with people that are there later. But in one of our talks with Crystal Lucky,
that's right,
you know, I did kind of go into a little further and a little deeper than what I would normally if I was talking to somebody. But although prison was prison and is prison, is nothing nice about it. Like, you're still confined, you're still being dictated to, you're still being on a regiment, you still do things that you don't want to do, get up when you don't want to get up, shovel snow when you don't want to, do all kinds of things. So it's still a repressive, you know, ordinance is still repressive. However, me and my sisters, my Moose sisters that also got sentenced with me, we just use our teachings, we use our belief, we use everything that we could to keep ourselves to a point where we kind of made ourselves feel like we wasn't in prison. And we just did that through just working, through activity, through keeping busy, through getting involved in things that we either liked or just pushed forward to do just because we had to do it. And so a lot of the things that we did was, well, we talked to a lot of people. We talked to a lot of people. We gave information to a lot of inmates and staff too. Not just inmates, but staff. And we worked very hard. We worked hard from mopping floors to scrubbing floors to cleaning bathrooms to shoveling snow, raking, shoveling, picking up worms to, I mean, everything. Anything kind of work that was there to do, we did it. So we made it neither menial or superior. It was just work. And so that's how we focus our mind. This is the teaching that we live by. We live by work. You know, this is John Africa's principle, work. And that's what we encourage other people to do too. So in the beginning, we didn't really have a lot of work to do. We just kind of stayed in, you know, until we got sentenced, we didn't really have a lot to do. So we just would just clean the area over and over and over again. And, you know, the people took notice of it. And while they may not have, at the time, trusted us or knew us, they took notice of the work that we did. They took notice of how clean it stayed. They took notice of the consistency that we put forth every single day, winter, summer, spring, fall. Snow, no snow, rain, it didn't matter. And that's how we pushed forward. We just kept busy. Now the garden was a little later on in our years, but before I was released, the garden program had been going on for 7 years, like that 7th year. And I was in it from the beginning. We were all in it from the beginning. And we just, you know, we learned how to do that. And we also worked very, very hard in the garden. It was an extraordinary project that we just put a lot into. And especially since nature is our belief, you know, just being in the soil and just, you know, just feeling like you're a part of this food that you're getting ready to eat, grow, it just makes you feel good. It just makes you feel good that you can give it to somebody and that it tastes so different. I never liked tomatoes before I went to jail. I'm telling you, the first cherry tomato I tasted, I was in love. And I don't even like store-bought tomatoes no more. Don't like them. I'll eat them because I have no choice. But I love tomatoes now just because of that, because it's just so good. You know?
Tell them about the tomatoes, all the tomatoes you all grew, and how you gave them to the
population.
To the population.
Yeah, the first year of the garden that we started and we worked in, they have everybody is on a committee. So you have the harvest committee, the planting committee, you have your maintenance committee, and all these committees get to participate in each stage of the growth of the garden. And so on the first couple of years, I was on the harvest committee. So I was the chairperson of the harvest committee, and which meant I was in charge of distributing the food once we got it. And there was 136 inmates in our area. And so we had to make sure that everybody was given an equal share, which means every cherry tomato that we grew, we had to count each one of them and divide them up between 136 people. And the first crop we ever got, we had over 2,500 cherry tomatoes. And we gave them actually to the whole population, and everybody in the cafeteria, whoever went that day for a meal, they got 3 cherry tomatoes. But let me tell you, let me tell you, it's like you starving and you don't have no food, and all of a sudden somebody give you a piece of bread. That's how it was. They were so appreciative. 3 tomatoes don't sound like much, but let me tell you, they were thanking us. They were like, "Oh, that was just so nice." Because you got to understand, we were in a unit that was not, that was apart from the rest of the prison population because they weren't in that unit. So all the food that we passed out, that we grew, was only supposed to be for our unit. But we wanted to give it to the population because we had so much, not only, but also so that people wouldn't feel bad, so that they would feel like, you know, that we weren't just being greedy. And so we asked our unit manager, could we do it? And she said, sure, as long as the kitchen was okay with it. So everybody was so appreciative of those little cherry tomatoes. They just couldn't. And they still talk about it like this history, like they can remember. Remember y'all gave us those tomatoes? And they always say move, like we were the ones that was, you know, actually, we were a big part of it. But, you know, it was everybody's garden. But it was like, oh, yeah, move. I know when you give it. Man, y'all fair, move. Y'all always giving us, hey, move. Y'all got any more tomatoes over here? Y'all got any cucumbers? And so it was a very pleasurable time in prison, because one thing that John Africa always teaches, that although wherever we're at, you know, it's your mind. And what is in your mind is what either enslaves you or it won't. So people can be on the street, but they can also be enslaved mentally. People are, you know, I mean, people are sentenced to jail a lot of times by their past. People are sentenced to jail, you know, by a term in the Army that they don't want. people are enslaved by things that they don't want to eat. People are enslaved by the things that they have to do. Some people are enslaved by the job that they have. So freedom is in the mind, and this is what John Africa teaches. And so we didn't put ourselves in jail, in prison. And this is one of the reasons why we were able to come out, you know, strong and not just give it in. Because let me tell you something, it was some hard times. You had to put one foot forward. I put one foot forward, and I just had to do it. It wasn't even a question. I didn't have a choice. You know, all I could think about was 2 babies that I left, and I had to get back to. Although by this time, I mean, year after year after year, I was still thinking like got to get to my babies, but now they're grown.
With babies.
And he comes back, you know, with his, you know, with the people who started out this fight to free move, you know, and May 13th, 1985, the bombing was a big, big thing that was done, you know, in respect for us, you know. I mean, you know, and that whole situation with that demonstration, May 13th, 1985, where a bomb was dropped, was done for us. That those children, those people that was in that house, they put their lives on the line for us, you know. And so even after that, even after 10 years after that, still, you know, they were just relentless, you know. And but Michael Jr. here, he was not giving up. That's his goal. No, never giving up. And that's what he did. He did not give up. And anybody that was willing to come with him to do what he wanted to do. So like Michael Sr. said, I had him in prison, and he got out and came to bring me back out of there.
I think we should open it up for some questions so people can ask you. I'm sure they've got stuff to ask you. Caleb Lucky is in the back there, so I'm going to let him start. This is a little nepotism, forgive me. So ask whatever questions that you want. I don't know if the video, can you all see? Do you need us to talk into the mic, or will it pick it up? Or? All right, so Caleb, I think you're going to have to talk really loud so that we can hear the question.
So my question is for either of you all. How did you all keep that love and that connection with you just as strong, like when you were in prison, just as strong as like with that?
So, did everybody hear his question? How did you keep the love strong together? And maybe, I guess they can hear you.
It was easy. I mean,
You gotta put it closer to your mouth.
all right, because you already love someone. You know, the love don't stop. You know, it strengthens. It, you know, it's just a natural thing. You know, it wasn't something that I had to try or something I had to be conscious of. You know, the love was already there, and it remained so. So I loved them throughout. You know, so it was just a natural thing.
Have you all seen the poster of them hugging? Do you have it, Joyce? Is Joyce around?
No, she's not.
All right, I'm gonna, while they're talking, I'm gonna see if I can pull it up.
Just Google.
It's the, can I Google it? Because I have, it is the best picture ever. And it encapsulates their love. It absolutely does. Michael, why don't you talk about being parented by these two from prison.
From prison. Like my dad said, the love was there. I mean, I don't remember the first time I saw my dad, but I remember the first time that I remember seeing my dad. And when he told me that he was my dad, I hugged him. You know, and that's where it was from then on, and it just, we bonded immediately. And when the first time I seen my mom that I remember, it was the same thing. I mean, I remember looking at my mom and kind of like knowing it was her. You know, from prison, like the first, I remember looking to see, you could, in the prison, the way that prison was, you would see women come down for visits, and I didn't know what she looked like. So I would try to imagine which one was going to be my mother, right? So as these different women came down the steps, I'm looking like, I know that ain't her. That's not her. And then when she came out, I was looking and I thought to myself, I hope that's her. You know what I mean? And when it was, I was like, yes. Because she was so pretty. And like like her head, she was sweating. And her head, she got this thing on the top of her head from the sun, right? It'd be beaming, like shining. So, and that's what I saw. I saw her and I said, I hope that's her. And then, and when I found out it was, I was so happy. And the love was there before I saw her. It had to be because I just remember feeling so happy that I was going to see her, this person that I never really knew. And so that's the way it's been, you know, and that's due to like our family. You know, like Move gets demonized for people not really understanding us in the 70s. They thought of us as being wild and crazy and radical and out of control and uneducated and just savage-like. And that's the kind of image that they put out to people. So people thought of us being like that too. But, you know, in reality, Move are very warm people. And we have feelings, you know. So when I was at home, when I wasn't with my mom and dad when they were in prison, Move people would, you know, they would then tell me things about them. And they made me feel more about them than I already naturally did. So that was like how we did things. You know, I saw Pam Africa come in here, you know, and I felt so good just seeing her. And like I smiled, I was waving, there she go, look. And Cheryl, look, Cheryl clapping, and Cindy, like these are our family. And just seeing them, I haven't seen them in a while. Like, you know, just a couple weeks. But that's a while for me. That's a while for me. Because I was raised by these people. You know what I'm saying? And I just feel so good just seeing them. My whole inside just like, you know how they say when you love somebody and you see them, your heart skip a beat? That's how I felt when they came in the room just now. Like, my whole, you know, because I was a community kid. You know, not having my mom and my dad there, the Move community, they took and stepped up and, you know, tried to fill in all of those blanks. And they kept me, you know, on track. And when I was acting like a knucklehead, and, you know, they were the ones who really helped me stay focused. And I still get calls from time to time from people saying, what did you say? What did you do? And, you know, kind of like on the chastised tip sometimes when I do wrong. You know, and that's family. You know, and that's what kept us going. That's what kept me going. That's what enhanced the love that was already naturally there. You know, so that's where I'm at.
Yeah. It's funny because a lot of times when somebody will say, like Dr. Crystal, she'll say, you know, and she's amazed at how we parenting them from prison. And I'm thinking, I didn't feel like I parented from prison. I feel like I just, you know, I don't feel like I did anything. But, you know, as I can remember things and remember different times when, you know, once they got of age, you know, he would always ask advice, and my daughter too, she would ask about advice about doing things, and we would always give advice. But I can definitely remember them always wanting our input and our support, and they wanted us to be pleased with them. They wanted to make decisions that they felt like would make them feel good, you know. So they always wanted our approval. And so, you know, I still struggle with that, but because I wasn't there. So, you know, that still does give me, you know, a lot of trouble, you know, honestly. But, you know, because Michael is so loving and he wanted that so much, I mean, he would just put himself in situations where he thought that, you know, like, he wants to remember these things. He wants to remember even when he was born. But he can't, but he wants to remember these things because he is so easy to love. And he wants, because he was like that with us, you know, he just, like he said, was just immediately, like he just loved us just because he knew that's my dad, that's my mom. And he has just carried this. And that just made me feel good too, because look, I felt like I left him. I made a decision that, really did a lot to his life and my daughter's life, and so, for me, I'm thinking, if you still love me, then I'm definitely going to love you, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep that bond going.
Do you see why I said it was love at first sight? Do you understand why? I just like, this is just like the most wonderful thing I really feel like this was like these folks were like a gift that just came down from heaven for me. And other questions? Want to open it up? Yes, ma'am.
Talk about the dogs.
The dogs in prison?
Oh, the dogs in prison? Oh, that was one of the programs that that my sisters and I were in when we were in prison too. In Cambridge Springs, we had a what they call a dog program. It was a puppy program, and it was Canine Partners for Life. These were dogs that we raised from puppies from 8 weeks old, until they were 16 months, I think, 16 months old, and then, based on the training, the basic obedience training that we did with them, which was about 44 different commands that they learned, they were then able to be placed with a recipient that had a special need, or somebody disabled, or even now with somebody with diabetes or heart conditions. These dogs were being groomed for being service dogs to help people who were disabled, learn to open doors for people, learn to open doors and help somebody go to the bathroom, just learn to give a person back or give a person their independence. And I mean, we worked with these dogs for years, since we did it for a lot of years, and that's one of the things that that the prison also, we're really grateful for, because they know, being moved people, that we would never try to hurt them. We would always give them the best care that we could possibly give them. We would never, ever also allow anybody else to try to mistreat them or abuse them or just prostitute them for anything. So, I mean, that was another very, very rewarding program that me and my sisters did, while we were incarcerated too. And very joyful. It was very, very rewarding. Like, them dogs gave us a lot.
So, just real quick follow-up, was it hard when it came time to give them up, though?
Oh, hard to give them up?
Yeah.
Was it hard to give them up? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was very, very, it was extremely hard to give them up. But what they did was, what the CPL program did was, and what they do is, they know it's hard. So they give you another puppy right away to start training.
That's a good
So
idea.
yeah. So it's just like, so it actually works out for them. But it is hard, because they're raising a baby.
It's a therapeutic business.
Yeah.
Smart.
And for women, you not only have the nurturing that you have for your own child, that you did it. Well, you might not have done, but you use it as therapy yourself. So yes, it was hard to give up, but yeah, they gave us another puppy right away.
You have a question here.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make this cohesive, but there's many questions. Anyway, one of the many that's striking me is that so many things that you all were about in the 70s, I just want your response or reflections about this. So let's run the list, like natural food, raw food, collective living, homeschooling, natural births, all of the, natural hair, a sort of cohesive, responsible, sustainable relationship to the earth. All of these things that now, the culture has finally caught up to. You all were doing, and by the way, I remember when Delbert Africa got beat on the television. I was in college. So I just want to make tribute that I remember what happened. But how does this make you all feel now to see the way the culture has shifted, and yet at the same time, you know, in some ways we're just as bad as we ever were in terms of, you know, police brutality and such.
My thing on that is give John Africa his credit. You know, John Africa was ahead of his time, and people didn't want to really face that. You know, they don't want to acknowledge that, but that's the truth. You know, Move was doing raw food when raw food wasn't popular. Yeah. Our hair was like this when it was despised.
Yeah.
You know, composting, our exercise routines, the thing of homeschooling, all that stuff is stuff that we were doing, and that's how we lived. So yeah, give John Africa his credit, and recognize that the same way John Africa was looked at that time is now being put in markets and packaged and sold and all of that and prostituted. But the reason for John Africa doing that was not for people, the system, to take and use and prostitute it and make money off of it. It was for the purpose of teaching people the way to live that does not harm others, that does not have a negative effect on the earth. That's what it was for. It wasn't so that Whole Foods can go and sell apples organically for $2 an apple. It was for the purpose of getting people to understand that apples grow on trees and food is supposed to be free for all of us. And that's not, they're trying to, I think it's also a deliberate thing where they're trying to do that so that people won't look at people like John Africa. In the same way, they have changed the way of Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was saying certain things. He was looked at as all kind of crazy back then when he was marching. But now they put him in schools, kind of changed the way what he was actually saying, and they cheapened it and they weakened it, right? And have people accepting it like this is what he was about. But in reality, what he really was about, if he saw the way people talk about him, he would have something to say about it if he was here to say something about it. So, you know, give the truth the way it really is, and don't change it and twist it, because when you do that, what you end up doing is going back to and becoming the very thing that John Africa was talking about in the first place. You know, because that's what the system has done. They have twisted life into that of something else, and when you twist it, when you change it, you've weakened it. If you turn the water into something other than water, it's something else, and it's not going to be the same health benefit that it is when it's just water. When you add sugar to it and flavors to it and food coloring to it, it's not water anymore, and it's not going to give you the same benefit as water. The same with the food, the same with the air, the same with people, the same with health. So that's what we're talking about. Give John Africa his credit. Long live John Africa.
For like one more question. Yes, sir.
So I don't have a question.
Yes,
I
sir.
just want to say that it's a blessing to be in the presence of you three. Okay, because when I was in 7th grade, he and I, we rode our bikes to the movement and we watched it burn. We felt the flames on our face when I was in 7th grade.
Wow.
So from that, we always talked about this for years. That was my neighborhood. We used to go fishing at Cobb's Creek.
Wow.
Okay. A lot of people laughed at y'all. They saw the hair. They saw the kids. I saw the barricades. I seen a lot, but nobody explained to us what it was. They didn't teach us that in school. Our parents didn't know what it was. Only thing they knew was they wanted y'all out of the neighborhood. They wanted y'all off the street. So when that happened to y'all, it blew everybody's mind. So from that day, we always talked about this. And it's ironic that I met him not too long ago. We talked over the phone. So it's a blessing when somebody from Hollywood, they contact me, and they wanted me to contact you. That's our job now. That's what we do.
Wow.
We're here to put y'all story out on the big screen.
Wow.
We from Hollywood now. Like, I was born and raised in Philadelphia. What we doing now is we come to take you somewhere else so everybody else can hear this. Not just here in Villanova, not just here in this room. And it's a lot for me to say this because it's bringing me tears right now. You know, my mother and father, they from down the bottom. My family's from, we're not from here. We're not from here. So we all know y'all's story. It's the pain that I got, okay? My hair is like yours. Y'all look like me. Y'all was in jail for 40 years. Y'all look good. 40 years, okay? He looked good for 40 years, okay? And then for him to go through all this, okay, I had my mom and my dad. My dad was around, but my mom raised me, okay? You two, y'all was in prison. He turned out to be a man. While his mom and dad was in prison. He didn't go to prison. He not doing life.
Nope.
Okay, but it's hard. And whatever team that you had and put this together, I commend. I commend.
Thank you.
On the move.
I commend.
On the move,
Thank
baby.
you.
Some of them right over there.
Like I said, we here to put this out there.
Wow.
Because when they gave me this assignment, I said,
Wow.
that's my people. I lived around the corner from them for years. I learned a lot. I read a lot.
Wow.
And I'm just here to say, whatever we got to do to help y'all, we're here to help y'all. I didn't sit in this front row for nothing.
Wow.
All right. All right. All right.
So we talk about Mike, and he deserves to be talked about for his activity and everything he's done and all his commitment. But everybody of his generation is like him. And this is what they wanted to stop. They didn't want young soldiers. They didn't want young people who were conscious. They wanted to stomp them out. But he epitomizes what all those kids are like. They're all just like him. His wife is out there. His child is out there. His kids, their cousins, they're all just like him.
A lot of my friends know him. Me and him, we've been in the same room plenty of times and didn't know it.
Wow.
Plenty of times.
So
I didn't know it.
So those children they murdered up there at May 13th and Osage Avenue,
It's cousins.
you know, and it had nothing to do with them thinking that he was going to be violent, they were going to be violent. It's this information that he's putting out in an example.
So my one question, I'm sorry. My one question is the fact that they did that to you guys. I mean, I'm mad about it. How mad are you? Or are you still mad? Or is it forgiven? Or what happens after this?
Well, I'll answer the first one. I'll answer your last question first. What happens after this is we're going to keep on going on. It's like Mike's, his thing is never give up. And Moo's thing is never give up. And you can see the outcome of his never giving up, of his moves never giving up. Because, like I said, I had him in prison, he came back and got us out, along with the people who was with him to get us out. So he never gave up. We never gave up. I can tell you some things that sometimes it would be at my lowest, and I would just feel so sad inside, because I just missed all that, and I just didn't know what was going to happen. We had received 30 to 100 years in prison, and I didn't know how he was going to. You know, me and Senior would communicate. You know, we talk about things that was going on with the kids and home, and this was like long distance. We were letter writing, so we were like long 10, 12 page letters to each other, trying to figure out what we need to do. They weren't no love letters. They was work. They was what we need to do.
Love letter?
Oh, of course. But I mean, it was more like, it wasn't romance. It was definitely love there, because it was just, we had to sometimes agonize through decisions that we had to make, as a family through the mail, and involve them. And, one time I remember I was on the phone with Michael, not that long ago, on the phone with Michael, and we were talking about something that was going on with his dad. And I said, well, I don't know if he should do that or not, because, this, that, and the other. And Michael said, well, Dad is right here on the phone. I said, oh, he is? Well, then tell him I said just such a thing. And he was like, hold on, Mom. He would go talk to his dad, and he said, Mom, Dad said such and such a thing. He said, okay, hold on, Mom. So, I mean, this is how we did this, and it was like a lot of it. And the thing is, at my lowest time, sometimes all I could say was, you can't do no more. So you just got to let your faith guide you and just keep you going, and just whatever happened, you just have to keep going. You have to keep going. And that's what I did. And that's also the love, because love, you just don't give up. I just couldn't. There was no way I could. I couldn't give up on nothing. My marriage, I mean, this man here, Michael Senior, I'm talking about, has just stuck by me through everything, thick, thin, everything. All those vows that you talk about, thick and thin, better or worse, we never took those vows, actually. But you know what? We took them. We really live. We live by them. We live by them. And Crystal Lucky's gonna make sure we take them soon.
I say something else too.
Dr. Crystal Lucky.
Doctor. Yeah, doctor.
Professor.
Crystal Lucky is all I'm going to do is confirm what's already been done for 40 years.
Yeah.
That's all I'm doing. They want to do a big celebration for everybody and do the big celebration and the paperwork. All I'm doing is I'm confirming what they have lived. For one of the things that was so impressive to me was, you know, as a pastor, I see a lot. And I see people throw their marriages away. And they throw their marriages away for little or nothing. They throw their marriages away because they can't get along. They throw their, we all know why. Lots of reasons. And when Michael Sr. called me and said what they wanted to do and we started planning, I was delighted to be able to do it because it was an example of what people really do when they take their vows and they take them seriously. Yeah. And so that's all I'm doing. I'm just putting a cherry on the top of something that's already been going on. I did want to say one thing. You asked about how, about the anger, and I asked the same question. And we've got hours and hours. We've got hours of stuff that needs to be transcribed, and we just put the tape on and we start talking, and one question turns into 10, that turns into 20. And one thing that Michael Sr. told me that he wanted to be a part of the book are the lyrics to the song "I Forgive You" by, remind me of the artist. Rochelle Farrell. And when I looked at the lyrics, not only do the lyrics work in terms of, forgiveness, but when you talk about how they look, the very things that you said when I first met them, I just kept saying, you don't look like what you've been through. And I think part of that is forgiveness. That when you have a heart of unforgiveness, you typically wear it on your body. And these are people who are hopeful and forgiving people. In so many ways. So many ways. And one other thing that I wanted to say, which is kind of reiterated what you were saying. When we first met, one of the reasons why I wanted their story told, and I wanted them to be able to tell their story and to shepherd that story through very carefully, is because it is in the day that we're in of mass incarceration, it is amazing that they came home to their son, who is a 40-year-old black male, who has no record, no criminal record, who has a house and a wife of 21 years, and prepared to bring his family home, and could live there and not violate parole. That was a miracle to me. And it was a miracle that in some ways was a miracle, but then in other ways wasn't, because of exactly what you said, that there are so many others like him that we don't get to hear about. And if I have to die trying, we're going to get this story told the way that we're all really happy with, so that when it goes out to the world, it's a story that all four of us can be very proud of, but also that your whole community, the community, can be proud of and can celebrate. I feel like we need to wrap up so that people can come and talk to you individually and shake your hand and all of that. I want to say thank you on behalf of my friends, my family. Thank you for coming and being with us. This means the world to me. It means the world to them. It means the world to Dr. Betts. Thank you to Africana. Thank you to history. Thank you to Peace and Justice. Thank you to all of you for coming.
Thank you all so much.